8th grade. Welcome to week 2, day 1, March 30th. I'm going to take you through what you're responsible for today and the lesson that you're learning about today. I just wanted to make sure that you all saw the announcement that I put on our stream. I also sent it to you through Pupil Path, just regarding the new schedule we will be following. So if you didn't see it already, just check that out on here before continuing with today's lesson. Okay, so I'm going to click on my classwork tab. There is a week 2 agenda available. So if you ever just needed like a guideline to remind you about what you're responsible for each day, it's located right here. Okay, you can use that as a nice resource. So I'm going to scroll down to week 2, day 1, March 30th. First thing you should do is take your attendance. Make sure that's completed before 11:59 tonight. Then you'll click on your two-way table lesson. So you'll notice that in here, you have your lesson, which is what you normally see. And there's also 2 links that I provided just as another resource. If you feel like after this video, if you feel like after going through the lesson, you're still a little confused, I felt like this one here takes you through how to create your two-way table. And then this one here takes you through how to find the relative frequency of the two-way table. All right, so just 2 extra resources to use if needed. Okay, so here's today's lesson. We're going to describe and clarify relationships between categorical data in a two-way frequency table and make connections, predictions, and conclusions about the data. So you have a warm-up, which is a Venn diagram. It is a survey of 50 students, and they were asked whether or not they were taking a foreign language or whether or not they played a sport. So this is the Venn diagram you would see on your screen, and then they ask you the following questions. So it says, how many students are taking a foreign language? So for foreign language, it's this circle here. So we know that obviously 23 students are taking a foreign language. The middle of a Venn diagram means that this data is a part of both foreign language and sport. So this 14 is representing 14 students that not only take a foreign language, but they also take a sport. So to figure out the total students that are taking a foreign language, we would have to do 23 plus 14 to get our answer. And that answer would be 37. Okay, so 37 students take a foreign language. Then it says how many students play a sport. So we would have to do the same thing. 10 is in the sports circle, but 14 includes students that also play a sport. Yes, they take a foreign language, but they also play a sport. So we would add those 2 together to answer the question of how many students play a sport. So it would be 10 plus 14, which would give us 24. Okay. Then the third question says, how many students do both? Well, we've already answered that question. That would be the number that's splitting the 2 circles. So 14 students do both. Okay. And then it says, how many students do not play a sport and do not take a foreign language? So in a Venn diagram, if it's not part of the data, that number would be on the outside of your circles. So that answer would be 3. So I'm going to put neither. And then the following question is, how many students play a sport but do not take a foreign language? So that would only be 10, because 10 students play a sport, but they're not included with the foreign language circle. So it would only be 10 for that. So that's 10 play sport, but no foreign language. All right, so the reason why we gave this to you as a warm-up is because your topic today, two-way tables, is very similar to the relationship that a Venn diagram shows. All right, so I'm going to continue on with the lesson. This just gives you the answers that we just went over as well. And then here is your vocabulary. So vocabulary 1 is categorical variables. Variables that measure characteristics using words that represent possible responses within a given category. Frequency counts can be made of the values for a given category. So for example, if we were talking about months, possible variables could be January, February, March. Colors, black, blue, pink, purple, could be possible variables for that. Pets, cats, dog, fish. Again, I think you're probably understanding what a categorical variable is at this point. Okay, vocabulary continued. You have relative frequency, which is going to be the ratio of the number desired results to the total number of trials. Okay, we'll get into that as we look at our two-way tables, which is the next vocabulary word. And that is a table that shows data that pertains to two different categories. So, like our warm-up, we were comparing students that take a foreign language versus students that play a sport. That could be created into a two-way table because you're comparing two different categories. Okay. So our first two-way table that we're going to create together is to identify the data of students that have a cell phone and also have AirPods. So they give us this information. They tell us that a survey of eighth graders, it should say, at a middle school found that 73 students own a cell phone and 60 of those students also own AirPods. There are 9 students that do not own a cell phone but own AirPods. 8 students do not own either things. So the way we can organize this data is what's called a two-way table. So you want to think about the two things that are being compared in the situation. We're talking about students that either have or do not have AirPods, and then also students that either have or do not have a cell phone. So your two-way table would look something like this, where you're organizing one category vertically. So this one would be about our AirPods, having AirPods, not having AirPods. And then you would have your other category horizontally. So having a cell phone, not having a cell phone. Okay? And then the outside columns, this space out here, would be your totals. All right? So let's go back to the information they tell us and figure out where we're going to put the numbers that we were provided. So they tell us that 73 students own a cell phone. So if we go to our two-way table, we want to go to the category for cell phones, and it's just telling us that they own a cell phone. So that would be the total amount of students. It's not discussing whether or not they have AirPods or not. So we're going to make the total students that own a cell phone 73. Okay? Then it tells us that 60 of those 73 students also own AirPods. So 60 of the 73. So that means they have a cell phone and they have AirPods. So that box would be right here, having a cell phone and having AirPods. So I'm going to put 60 here. Okay? Then it tells us that there are 9 students that do not own a cell phone but do own AirPods. So let's see. No cell phone, but have AirPods. So that's going to be right here. No cell phone, have AirPods. That's 9. And then they say 8 students do not own either. So we would want no cell phone, no AirPods. So we're going to put that here. Okay? So with this information, we can fill out the rest of the table by just doing addition or subtraction in some cases. So for example, right here I can see how many students do not own a cell phone by just adding up these two numbers to get my total. So it would be 9 plus 8 to give me 17. Okay, I could also figure out how many students in total have AirPods by adding across. So AirPods, if I'm only looking at the AirPods, that would be 60 plus 9. So a total of 69 students have AirPods. Okay, the other ones are going to take us a little bit extra work. So let's see. If I go to the cell phone category, I know that 60 of the 73 students own a cell phone and an AirPod, right? AirPods. If I wanted to figure out what this number is, well, if 73 is my total, and 60 of them are here, then whatever's left over would be the missing category here. So I would do 73 minus 60 to give me an answer of 13. So that number is going to go here. So 13 students own a cell phone but do not own AirPods. Okay, we have this. Now we can also figure out how many total students do not own AirPods by adding horizontally. So I'm going to do 13 plus 8, and that will give me an answer of 21. Okay, and then this box here will always be the total amount of people that you surveyed for this sample. And if you did it correctly, then this total plus this total, that sum should always equal this total plus this total. If it doesn't, then something went wrong in your table. So let's check if we did it right. 73 plus 17. That's going to give us an answer of 90. Let's check this out. 69 plus 21. That will also give us an answer of 90. So the total amount of students surveyed for this data was 90 students total. 69 of them own AirPods. 21 of them do not. 73 of them own a cell phone. 17 do not own a cell phone. And then you can also discuss the data that's inside this table. So like if I was looking at 60 students own a cell phone and also own AirPods. If I was to look here, this one is telling me 8 students do not own a cell phone and do not own AirPods. Okay? So that's how you create your two-way table. And then later in the lesson, it also goes into what we call taking that two-way table and making relative frequency. Okay, whenever they talk about relative frequency, you want to make sure that you're thinking percents. Percents is what they're looking for. Okay, so I'm just going to make this table above it so that we have both to look at. And they don't actually ask you to do this in your lesson, but I think it's just easier since this one's already made. I don't have to make another one for you. I'm just going to use the data from this to explain what relative frequency is. All right, so remember this will always be your total as well as this one, right? The outside always represents your total. So I'm going to actually just highlight that in another color. Okay, so here, okay, so the outside always talks about the totals. The outside of your frequency table, the outside of your two-way table will always be talking about your totals. And now I'm going to just go back and fill in our categories. So we have AirPods, no AirPods, we have cell phone, and no cell phone. Okay, so here is your two-way table filled in. You're going to be asked to do that a couple of times in this lesson with some other information, maybe about different categories going on in the situation. This is going to be our relative frequency table that represents this two-way table. So this is your two-way table. Okay, it just consists of numbers. And then this is called your two-way relative frequency table. And when we talk about that, we're talking about finding the percents. Okay, so to figure out the percent, what you want to do is you take the number in each of the boxes and you're going to divide it by the total amount that was surveyed. So for owning a cell phone and also owning AirPods, we're going to do 60 divided by 90. We're going to get that answer, so I'm going to do it in my calculator. 60 divided by 90. we're going to get 0.6 repeating. Okay, and then what you want to do is take that decimal and convert it to a percent. So you can do that by multiplying it by 100, or some of you remember your shortcut, which would just be moving that decimal 2 places. So it would be 66.6 repeating. If we want to round, we can just say that it would be 67%. So the relative frequency would be 67%. To find the relative frequency of someone that owns the cell phone but no AirPods, we go to our data, it's 13. So we take 13 and we divide it by 90. Okay, so I'm going to do that again. I get 0.14 repeating. Okay, and then again, multiply it by 100, or simply move your decimal 2 spaces. It would be 14.4 repeating. If I round it, it will be 14%. Ooh, that got a little sloppy, sorry. Okay, so the relative frequency would be 14%. To then get the total, our sum of these 2% should be what we get if we take 73 and divide it by the total 90. So sometimes you can just add these two. But to check, let's do it to make sure that that actually comes out correct. So we're going to do now 73 divided by 90. So we have 73 divided by 90. That gives us 0.81 repeating. And if I make this into a percent, multiply by 100 or move it twice. So it would be 81.1 repeating, or just 81%. So now let's check if what I told you before actually works out. So we got 81%. That means that 67 plus 14 should equal 81%. So I'm going to do that real quick. 67 plus, what was it? 14. It equals 81. So we are correct with that column. Okay, and then you keep doing that for the rest of the table. So I'm going to do it. If you guys want to fast forward till I get to the end of this, you can. But I'm going to keep going for those of you that are following along. So we have 9 divided by 90. I know that one by heart. It's going to be 0.1. If I make that into a percent, I'm going to move the decimal 2 places. Notice I'm missing a place value, so I'm going to fill that in with a 0. So this answer will be 10%. Okay, I then go to no cell phone, no AirPods, 8. So that's going to be 8 over 90. Oh, I'm getting sloppier as I go along. Okay, so now 8 divided by 90 equals 0.08 repeating. And if we make that into a percent, we're going to move it twice. So it would be 8.8 repeating percent, but we're going to round that to 9% because the 8 would bounce that 8 up, okay? So we're going to make this 9%. So again, this plus this would be our total percent for students that don't own a cell phone. It should be 19%, but we're going to check it by actually doing the calculation. So we're going to do 17 divided by 90. So notice every time we're dividing by the total. 17 divided by 90. Okay, so that gives me 0.18 repeating. Okay, and then if I make that into a percent, multiply by 100 or move it twice, it would be 18.8 repeating, but we're going to round it to 19 because the 8 makes that other 8 go up. And that supports, again, the sum of these two percentages. 10 plus 9 does equal 19, so we know that we're doing our calculations correct. Okay? To figure out these totals, we just add the rows. So we're going to do 67% plus 10%. That equals 77%. Okay? You could also check it by doing this division. I'll show it to you. So it would be 69 divided by 90. And that would equal 0.76 repeating. When we move our decimal or multiply it by 100, it would be 76.6 repeating, but the 6 would round that 76 to 77, so this is correct. We could then add this row. It would be 14 plus 9, so I know my answer should be 23%, but we'll check it. Let's see, it's 21 divided by 90. Okay, let's see, 21 divided by 90. And that gives us 0.23 repeating. But when we turn that into the percent, it would be 23%, okay? So something that's really cool when you find these relative frequencies is that when you add the final column and when you add the final row, both of these should add to 100%. Because remember, you are finding the relative frequency compared to the total. So if we were to do that final box, it would have been 90 divided by 90, which equals 1, and 1 converted to a percent is 100. So this is always a very nice check at the end of your work. This final column should always add to 100%, and this final row should always add to 100%, which it does. 81 plus 19 equals 100. 77 plus 23 equals 100. Okay, so these are the two tables that you guys are exploring today. I showed you how to create your regular two-way table. They're going to give you some information, and then you simply add or subtract depending on what spaces are left blank. Okay, if they ask you to find the relative frequency table, now you're talking about the percents. So you take the data from that spot and you divide it by the total, okay? Once you divide it by a total, then just remember you then take that decimal and convert it to a percent, okay? And that's what we did every time. And you'll notice that that last section in the bottom right will always equal 100% in a relative frequency table. And in a regular two-way table, that last corner, the bottom right, will always represent the total amount that was surveyed for this particular sample. Okay, so there's different examples that go along with this lesson where you're filling in the data and then you're making them into relative frequencies. That's the one I just did with you. And then there's a few more for you to practice. There's an extra practice for you to complete. Make sure you complete that and then click send, okay, by 11:59. And then you have a homework as well, again, due by 11:59. Okay, I hope this helped, guys. Remember, there's also those additional 2 links in your lesson tab if you need additional support. Okay, talk to you soon.